good morning. Thank you. It's really great to be someone's savior. That's a librarian's main ambition is the salvation business. And also, I have to say, oh yeah, I need the clicker. Someone got to get me the clicker. Watch the salvation thing happen from off stage. The other thing, TED is technology, entertainment, and design. That's libraries, man. I mean, libraries are mostly about entertainment. We all know that. But there's actually a lot of technology in them, some design. I really do want the clicker. Oh, goody. Thank you. So I got into this business because I'm interested in public policy. I'm interested in making things work better. When I was growing up in the 1960s, there was lots of really hot policy issues out there. Budget deficits, war, peace, civil rights, and there was a big difference then and now. Then actually everybody, even Republicans, believed that you could make things better by the judicious application of governmental work. So crazy radicals. There's a Republican in the front row here. I can tell he's wearing a tie. Crazy radicals like Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford believed in such things. And so I grew up in that world, and I believe that you could fix things. And I also believe this on a personal level, which gets me into consistent trouble with my family. So you know how it is. You come home from work, and one of the children or your spouse or your partner says, boy, I had a terrible day today. The windshield wiper was streaking. I couldn't see. I almost hit somebody. And what you're supposed to do then is hug your wife and say, God, that's awful, sweetheart. Here's a glass of scotch. And instead, what I do is I say, you mean you didn't check the windshield wiper before you went? I mean, you got to learn how to make that work better. So I decided I would do better by doing public policy instead of just private fixing, because the private fixing thing doesn't work. So I put up a slide now. What happens? That's me in front of the card catalog. As you can see, there's entertainment, design, and technology right there. So this is supposed to be, the theme here is supposed to be crazy ideas. And so the first crazy idea, which I actually completely believe, but there isn't a whole lot of evidence for it, is that you can make things better. And if I go back to the 60s and look at the problems that we had then, the problems we have now are almost all, but not entirely, the same ones. I'm going to talk about one in a moment that's a new one. But the old ones, war, peace, poverty, inequality, environmental issues, yep, they're still there. That's all good. And actually, we've done some backsliding on deficits. So in 1968, a very distinguished Republican economist who I used to work for, a guy named Herbert Stein, wrote a book called The Fiscal Revolution in America. And basically, the book was about how was it that the right, the left, everybody had agreed that you should actually run budget deficits in bad economic times. And it's a very good intellectual and political history of how that came to happen and how, again, the likes of Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford came to believe that. We've backslid on that one. We seem to have lost that piece of news. So I have this other belief, another crazy idea, which is understanding how things work might actually help to make things better. But it's not always so easy to get the understanding. Okay. So where there are big changes in public policy problems, they tend to come in because there are changes in technology. And I don't just mean technology in the sense of information technology and bits and bytes and flops and all those other cool things we like so much. I mean technology in the broad economic sense of how you do things, right? So consider the year 1900. A big policy problem wasn't automobile accidents. Why not? Because there really weren't more than about 6 automobiles, and so it was hard to have accidents in them. A big problem was disposal of horse manure in urban areas. Why is that? Because there were millions of pounds of horse manure being produced every day by hundreds of thousands of horses in urban areas because they hadn't really worked out the thing with cars yet. Now let's fast forward to 1910. It's flipped. Horse manure, almost not a problem at all anymore. Automobile accidents, big problem, and you have to construct public policy around the the new technology, which is the one that generates automobile accidents. So here's another example of a policy problem that emerged since the 1960s that was completely unimaginable in the 1960s when I was learning how to drive. Texting while driving, okay? So we had distractions while driving, don't get me wrong. We had bench seats then with the gear shift up on the column, so actually there were many distractions available to us in that regime that aren't so easily available now. So we did worry about that sort of thing, but it never crossed our tiny minds, right, that there would be a hand-operated, portable device that you could use to send text messages to people, to send notes to people, to send letters to people from your moving car. And it certainly never crossed our minds that anybody would be stupid enough to operate one of those while driving. And yet, here we are. And so we now have a set of public policy problems, right? People are writing laws and regulations and so forth around how we deal with texting while driving. Somewhere here there ought to be a note that says slides 3, but oh yeah, there it is. So new technology brings with it great opportunities, right, and also new problems. This is a cartoon that came out in 1962 in the New Yorker. That thing in the background is actually what computers looked like in 1962. Trust me on this, I used to run one of them. And I think the sentiment is a great one. 4,000 mathematicians would take 4,000 years to make a mistake as big as this machine can make in a nanosecond. And technology actually creates opportunities and huge new problems. And I'm going to argue that information technology as applied to libraries and publishing is doing exactly that right now. So let me talk about libraries for a minute. Just the next slide, maybe? Yeah, there we go. So is that the library in your pocket? And this is kind of what we're, anybody who recognizes the Mae West reference gets a gold star after class. So we're not quite here yet, but we're actually, from a technical sense, awfully close, right? Although there are rights, there are legal issues that prevent us from access to all of the works that have been digitized in our library and others. In fact, there are over 8 million works digitized in a collective library that we're part of, and Google's done about 15 million overall, and you can get at parts of them, all of some of them, on the web from your iPhone. And so, is that the library in your pocket? Well, pretty near. Now, libraries are not just places where we keep boring old books and we show to our parents so that they think that we've been reading and that's all good. Libraries are utterly essential to technology, entertainment, design, learning, mixing, remixing, putting things together, taking things apart. Libraries are the great social mashup bins for everything that we try to do with ideas, individually and collectively. Libraries were not invented because people were interested in holding the cultural history of the past. Libraries were invented because people actually had to be able to look up physical constants and engineering data and things like that that you need in order to make progress in the world. Libraries are built primarily not for book lovers, although people may come to love books, and I advise you to do so, but they were built for book users. And we cannot possibly have a successful society unless we have things that are a lot like books, which is to say, and things a lot like libraries, where we can store information, get it back reliably, know where it came from, mix it, reuse it, and do all the things that we do with it. So that's my pitch is you want to have that set of skills, and the second part of my pitch is going to be it's at risk for reasons that will be surprising, and the third part of the pitch is, of course, that you should go out there and fix it because I'm too old. So a little show and tell. This here thing is a book. It's by Nicole Krauss. It's called Great House. It's one of the most depressing novels you'll ever read. I recommend it highly. It's really superb. If you want a jollier novel, she wrote a book called The History of Love, which is really fun. But the fun all got bled out of this one. And it's an amazing piece of technology, this book. I own it. I bought it, paid for it with my own money, right? Which means that I have all sorts of rights to it. I can read it. I can give it to you. I can sell it to you. I can use it as a jack stand. I can tear pages out of it and use them for kindling if I want to. The book is mine. The tangible expression of the words in there are Nicole Krause's. She still owns them. I don't, right? And I may not go off and print off copies and sell copies of the book, although I can sell the original. And the key thing here is, under an entity called the doctrine of first sale in copyright law, the book is mine and I can sell it, and in particular the library can buy it and lend it to people. And you're all thinking, why is he talking about that? Of course that's the case. Books have always been that way. That's the way books are. Not so fast. Actually, books haven't always been that way. In 1908, the Bobbs-Merrill Company asserted that it had the right to determine the price at which booksellers could resell books that it had bought from them. They lost that case, and the Copyright Act of 1909, which was written by book users, fixed that one once and for all. So it's not obvious that you can do this. This is a matter of policy. This is a book, too. It's a Kindle. It's actually not a book. I have about 70 books on it, one of which happens to be this one. You might ask me, why do I have both the Kindle version and the... Well, I was going on a trip, and I was reading the hardcover, and I forgot to bring it with me, and I was feeling like I wanted to finish the book, so I bought another copy. This is on the Kindle. This is one of the advantages of middle age, is you can afford to unwind your own stupidity. But this one, my copy of Nicole Krause's book on the Kindle, right, has none of those other features. I actually cannot, under the terms of use of the Kindle, lend it to you. I can sell you the Kindle, but not with the stuff on it. I have to take stuff off it if I want to sell it to you. If I'm a library and if I donate this Kindle to the library may not lend the Kindle to a patron in order for that patron to read books. And in fact, and here it begins to matter a lot, there are many books now that are coming out only on e-readers. I shouldn't be unfair to Amazon. This isn't just the Kindle. All the e-readers have the same licensing arrangements. But these things come out only on e-readers. The library has no way, this is the Ann Arbor Public Library, the district library, has no way of being able to make those works available to the tax-paying citizens of Ann Arbor. The works cannot be bought, and there's no license that the libraries have that allows them to lend them. That's a real serious problem, right? Because that's going to mean that there are all sorts of things that we might want to have that aren't going to be available to us. Thomas Jefferson, so the third idea, which I should have said before, is giving things away can increase their value. This is this idea of being able to use the library as the bin for mashups and such. And the fourth crazy idea, this is not a crazy idea at all, it's Thomas Jefferson. So Jefferson makes this point. He had crazy ideas, but this wasn't one of them. Jefferson makes the point that ideas are a special breed of character that should not be thought of as property. Because if I have an idea and I share it with you, you have it too, and I don't have it any less, right? It's a magic way in which we can make the world better, going back to the crazy ideas. And he actually argues that it's a moral imperative that we do so. Memorize that quickly. The key point is inventions cannot in nature be a subject of property. So he's making a natural rights argument against intellectual property. And like so many other things, although not everything, Jefferson totally had that right. Now, Congress, the constitutional framers recognize that you have to pay people to do the work that generates new ideas. And so they made up this idea, which is an exquisite economic balance, right, which basically says you want ideas out there. You want to promote the progress of science and the useful arts. That's the purpose of invention, of authorship, of ideas. But you should give authors and inventors exclusive rights to that stuff for a while so that they have an incentive to do it. And that's a fairly sensible setup. And when Congress wrote the first Copyright Act, the term of copyright was 14 years, and that actually worked fairly well. It's now life plus 70 years, which seems a little long, but we'll get to that another time. Here's a nice use of copyrighted material. These are two exemplary actors in a documentary playing exemplary young men with bananas. And the point I'm making here is, again, it's mix, remix, burn, make new things out of the things that are there, ideas, images, sounds, those are built to be able to do that with. Of course, you want to make sure that the original producer gets something, but you don't want to lock things up if you can avoid it. The doctrine of first sale has this wonderful mix because you have the object and you can do something with it. If you don't have the doctrine of first sale, you can't do things with the other parts. So, nothing happened there. So giving away things increases their value. You have to design a system that makes giving away things work in a reliable way. This again goes back to libraries. Libraries are complicated, expensive critters, right? And they're complicated and expensive not because it's so hard to give things away. You could just open up the doors and say, take as much as you want and you're done. But actually you want to give things away in a reliable way where you know what they are, where you can find them again, and so on and so forth. And that ain't cheap. Universities, by the way, give away ideas in exactly the same incredibly expensive sense. So organizing things to give things away is actually a non-trivial problem. So here's one of my favorite cartoons. I don't know if it's readable, but basically it juxtaposes talking about intellectual property with sharing. And again, I want the sharing that we're talking about. Here it's the third grade class, so it's not so bad, but I want it to be this rich ability to remix and repurpose and recombine, to sample, to do the things that artists do, to do the things that technologists do, even to do the things that libraries do and designers do. And so now I want to jump to one of my favorite authors, who makes the suggestion that if we're going to do good work, we'd better get ourselves organized to do it. And I want to pose that there's a future that's a rich cornucopia of all this cool digital stuff that we can get at and play with and communicate with each other about. That's the world that most of us feel like we live in, but actually, again, back to the problem with this, if you buy your books on this puppy, right, if you download, if you buy your books on this puppy anyhow, there's no good mechanism to assure that your grandchildren are going to be able to read the stories that you read to them and that your grandmother read to you. Because whereas this guy you own, including the use of the words in it, this one you don't. So that's the pretty future. That's what the present sort of looks like. There's another possibility, which is a wasteland. There are forces in the world that will lock up intellectual property, lock up ideas, lock up expressions, right, so that you have the wasteland instead. You shouldn't let that happen. So the fifth crazy idea is you can choose the future. And the future you want to choose is one in which we are sensible about giving things away, right? It's a world in which the doctrine of first sale, the ability to hold, to use, to preserve, to reuse things that we acquire legally, digitally. I'm not saying we shouldn't pay for them. I'm not saying that we should download things and steal them. Heavens, no. Things that we acquire legally at reasonable prices can be used and reused again. And there's a bunch of places that will help you save the world from intellectual property, which is a bad phrase. And thank you very much.